So the next Dplyr verb is the filter function. Okay, so this filter function filters values based on conditions, right? So essentially, it's just a subset operator. It just picks the rows based on some value. Okay, so you can actually use these logical rules or conditions in conjunctions with the filter verb. Okay, so we have less than here, greater than. You can apply that on the different columns, and this predicate just returns either true or false. Let's go ahead and look at an example here. Okay, so we're gonna still use the Gapminder dataset. First of all, we need to make sure you load the library, the Gapminder library and the Dplyr, which will help us access the filter verb. So let's inspect this. Let's load up the Gapminder dataset again. You can see we have 6 columns and over 1,700 observations. Okay, so pay attention to this column. This is what we're going to be using for filtering in our task. So you can see we have different year. So we can decide to filter to display only the rows that meet this criteria. Okay, so let's look at the first task. So we want to use the filter function here in conjunction with the pipe to extract only the observations or rows from the year 1972, right? And you can see already we have some of those years in our rows here. So for example, this one, okay? So in order to do that, remember we use the double equal sign to compare. So how do we achieve that? So to do that, we use the pipe operator. So we start with Gapminder, that's our data set, right? Then Shift Command M, and then we pipe that into the filter function. So the filter function will be just filter, all right? And then we pass the column of interest that we want to filter, okay? So remember here, the year should be equals to 1972. So to do that, we go and look at a variable interest. That's the year column. So we pass here the column, right? Then we use the logical operator, equals to, equals twice, and then we pass, since this is not a string, we can just pass 1972. So we run this, and it filters for us only the results that meet that criteria. As simple as that. Okay. So another thing we could do here, we could also filter based on some data, right? So suppose you want to filter only for a country called Argentina in 2002. So using the filter function, how are you going to go about this? All right. Again, we're going to just, first of all, you want to know what column Argentina comes from. So if you go back here, you can see this column is the country column. Okay. And the year here is another column. So we need to use these logical operators that meet this criteria. First, Argentina, and second, the year 2002. So to do this, we simply just type Gapminder, we pipe that, okay? So we pipe that to the next function called filter, and then we pass these 2 conditions. So the first condition here is country. Remember, as you type here, it will appear here, then equals to, then this is where you have to use, because it's a string, right? You're gonna use that double quotation. And remember, R is case sensitive. So just make sure you type exactly as the value appears in our data set, right? Then we separate that by a comma. The next condition is that we wanna pull data where year equals to 2002, okay? If we've done it correctly, we run this again and see we only pulled a specific observation that meets this criteria. And this is the power of filter, okay? You can also look at the other different data set that comes with Dplyr. So for instance, here, there's a data set called storms. So let's say, for example, we wanna filter, in fact, let's just run that. Okay, so this is how it looks like. So we have this so many columns. So let's say we wanna filter a storm called maybe Amy, right? Or maybe we wanna get a storm that's called, let's see, I think there's a storm here called Gloria. Okay, so let's just go ahead and do that. So you could just say from this data set, right? We wanna filter based on the wind, for example, here. Wind, maybe that's greater than 60. So we can just say wind, okay? Greater than sign here, greater than 60. And then we can say name, which happens to be this first column. Then we can use what we already saw previously in our slide. We can use this percentage sign in, right? So what that means, you know, we want to only extract, only, or rather want to display only the storm that goes by this name. All right. So if we do that, we should only see storms by the name Gloria. Again, and the wind has to satisfy this condition. And lastly here, I could also show you another package called diamonds. We've already seen this. We can filter. So first of all, we can see what this diamond is all about. We can run that. Okay, we can see we have 10 columns. Suppose we just want to filter the cart, right? Maybe to ideal, and maybe the caret here, maybe to some value. Okay, so to do that, Shift Command M, we could say we want to filter based on maybe a cart equals to. Then since this is a string, then we're going to use the double quotation mark, ideal. Remember, this is capital I, so just make sure it kind of matches that. And say the caret here, something maybe greater than some number. You needed to have seen what numbers we have here. So I'll just pick some number there. So if we run this, you can see we only have 4 rows that meet this criteria. Okay. So for your exercise, you can try probably these 2 questions here. So you can write a code that returns all the rows where the population is greater than or equals to 100,000, and also do another code that returns all the rows that have a missing value for year. Okay, so here the clue here, you're gonna use the isNA, right? The isNA function. Then you can pass the year just to check. Okay, so in our next video, we're gonna look at arrange, another verb in Dplyr package.